The next period that we want to review is what we call the High Medieval or Scholastic period, following these two very important schisms that we must keep in mind: the schism in Islam and the schism between the Greek Orthodox Church and the Holy Catholic Church. In the midst of this, something to remember is the period of scholasticism, where we think of a critical thought that is also emphasizing the dialectical reasoning, because they're trying to make a syncretism between Plato, Aristotle, and the Christian theology. Nobody is more famous for this than Thomas Aquinas, that writes the Summa Theologica, which is basically an instructional guide for theology students. It becomes a compendium of all the main theological teachings and is considered still today the pinnacle of medieval Christian philosophy. And more than anything that we should remember too is that it's an argument for religious toleration. And something fundamental to keep in mind is the effects of the printing press. In 1440, Johannes Gutenberg is able to figure out a machine that would highly speed up the process of the diffusion of ideas, all types of ideas. And by the 1500s, printed books were already widely available for a new type of cultural resistance. And in that means of the cultural resistance that is embodied in the sharing of ideas by written literature, stories, and in the case of Europe, by the Bible that becomes more accessible to more people to read for themselves. Now, we know that this increased the literate traditions in the entire continent and that there was a boom in universities. Again, it must not be forgotten that the writing and printing were probably the main agents of the conquest, such as the printed accounts of Pizarro or the printed accounts of Hernán Cortés in the Americas, Pizarro in Peru, Hernán Cortés in Mexico, basically provided a plethora of incentives for people to go over to the Americas to settle in these newly acquired territories of the Holy Roman Empire. All of these issues are very important to keep in mind because, as we will see, they are very relevant as we use the evolutionary approach to answer questions of why people do the type of things they do here in the Americas. To sum up, the very important effects that the Middle Ages have in Europe is the establishments of the first universities, both Islamic and Christians. We have the Islamic expansion in Europe. We have the important battles of Charles Martel stopping Islamic faith going north in the 1700s. We also have the presence of Norse raids and settlements, basically transforming what would be Northern Europe. We also have the Norse conversion to Christianity. That is a slow, gradual process that happens from the 8th century to the 12th century. We have the consolidation of the Papal States. We have the Byzantine Empire and the Orthodox Church, as we reviewed earlier, kind of getting a fuse with the Great Schism. We have Pope Urban II calling for the Crusaders to go and retake the Holy Lands in 1095. And also the very important Ottoman Empire, which controls the entire region of the Eastern Mediterranean coast from 1300 till the end of World War I. A very important part of decolonizing our knowledge is to be aware of the power and importance of the Ottoman Empire for these last 700 years. Okay, this is an image of Hagia Sophia, which was the church built by Constantine, a Roman emperor. It was one of the most important Catholic churches, but with the attack of Mehmet the Great. The Ottoman Turks took over Constantinople in 1452-53, and Sultan Mehmet II basically stops the customary pilgrimage. There was a lot of raiding going on after you took a city, but before the people could destroy this amazing place, Sultan Mehmet II converted it to a mosque, and very interestingly, from 1453 on, this newly acquired territory for the Ottomans, this city of Constantinople, becomes the most tolerant, religiously tolerant place on the Mediterranean, a place where people that were being persecuted elsewhere would seek opportunities for staying. So that's one of the reasons also why Constantinople, today Istanbul, is today such a multicultural place. Okay? Other relevant information is what ended up transforming entire Northern Europe. I am sure all of you are very aware of this. Here I'm just leaving you with these slides because it is with Martin Luther's defiance to the Catholic Church with the nailing of the 95 Theses that he transforms the landscape in Europe. Today we credit it for him, but historians agree that it was a whole movement of people that supported his ideas because they too read the Bible that he had translated from Latin into what today is known as the German language. And he told people, read the Bible for yourself. Nowhere here does it say anything about indulgences or the power of the Papal States, and therefore people became Protestants against the church. Anyway, this is all very important information that is, as I said, elemental for understanding the present-day religions as we observe them today. I invite you to watch. There are many films and documentaries about Martin Luther and these processes dividing the way that religion would be practicing under Catholic or under the doctrines of the followers of Jesus, and maybe because it's an elemental part of this nation's history you are very well acquainted with. So I wanted to include it in this lecture as it's fundamental to see the differences of Protestantism and those of the Catholic Church. Nor do we see more clearly those differences than between practices in the United States and practices, very interestingly, as we're observing with the exercise of Oaxaca, California, by indigenous peoples from Mexico. And here is just a map of Europe around the 1500s, the extension of the Ottoman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, Portugal, France, and this map should also be put outside of a Eurocentric perspective in a more broader perspective, with the understanding that it is during these times, 1450 to 750, that we have what we call the gunpowder empires, present-day Turkey, Iran, and India. Very important of the Ottoman empires, the gunpowder empires, is that all of them were Islamic. The Ottomans, the Safavid Empire, and the Mughals. Okay? This is relevant for when you think about the big tensions that exist today in the country of India between Hindus and Muslims. There was a time, at least until the British Raj, that the Mughals, an Islamic empire, controlled the region of India that had for thousands of years followed Hinduism. But India has many other religions, such as the Sikh religion and many other religions very famous like Buddhism. So this is just a little graph that should alert us. Now, Iran is Shia Islam. Today, most Islam that's practiced in this region is also Sunni, as well as Sunni Islam majoritarily followed here. Gets a little bit more complex, but all of this is to prepare us to what we understand as the Renaissance in Europe. Okay, basically the Renaissance is the rebirth, this period in European civilization that follows the Middle Ages. The reason that I went so far back into history is for us to kind of have common ground in basic world history as it pertains to some of the most famous religions that have a very big impact in the way that religions and belief systems are practiced today in the Americas by many indigenous populations, as you are seeing in the case of Oaxaca, California. So, in this timeline, we have this common timeline of studying Western civilizations. What I'm trying to prove here is that we need this type of history in order to make sense to what many indigenous communities are doing here today in California. Okay, so the last slides we have here is a quick quiz that you will complete on Canvas. The idea is just to make sure that you kind of heard most of my arguments and why I'm trying to make us aware that these types of informations of so many ancient religions in the past allow us to have a more holistic approach to how we analyze belief systems today in the 21st century. Kind of what are the tools of the holistic approach? Well, we have the evolutionary approach. In this evolutionary approach, a very important part is to have a common knowledge, common background of this, of the history of the study of religion, and basically the ancient common past that we have. Thank you very much for listening to this. This is the end of our lectures number 2.